can't wait for you to hear from today's guest, Melissa Klepacki. She is a gut health expert, has a master's degree in acupuncture, also has a background in education, and a lot of her own health struggles. And she's now the resource for her clients that really she wishes she had. So she shares so much information with us today. I learned a ton from her, and I can't wait for you to hear the conversation. Who's the person you're being? Are you satisfied? Welcome to Be the Person, a podcast for the brave and the curious, ready to explore their true potential. I'm your host, Annie Randall. Join me as we delve into topics and ask unexpected questions to be our best selves. Melissa Klepacki, welcome to the show.
And thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here. I get to talk about my favorite subject, which is gut health. So thanks.
You know, I really enjoyed our conversation that we had a few weeks ago on this topic. And I'm excited for you just to share a little bit about your personal experience so people can understand why are you focusing on this work and how you really got to this point.
Sure. I'd love to share my story. I was trained as an acupuncturist. My undergrad studies were in education, and my master's degree is in alternative medicine, Chinese medicine, and acupuncture. And I like to say that I'm the perfect person to educate people about alternative medicine for those reasons. So I studied in the 90s up in Boston, Chinese medicine, Japanese medicine, herbal medicine, um, a wonderful education up there. I practiced in Boston for a little while. I practiced in Philadelphia for a little while, practiced in New York City a tiny bit. I kind of had some career changes and tried to explore um, the world outside of medicine, which I quickly learned was not for me. But wound up practicing in New Jersey, marrying my husband, having two little boys, and woke up one morning and my hand was numb. Just thought I slept on my neck wrong, went about my morning. By the afternoon, I started to feel fluish. And I said to my husband, this is going to sound really weird, but I feel like my leg is going numb. And he said, I'll take care of the boys. Why don't you go lie down? We'll figure it out. It was like noon or 1 o'clock. And I started to feel progressively worse. And I said, I need to go see the doctor. So called the doctor, went in. By the time I got to the doctor's office, my whole left side was numb. I went to the emergency room, spent a couple days in the hospital, had all kinds of studies, and nothing was apparent. They had no idea what was wrong with me. The only thing that was wrong on any study that they did was that my white blood cell count was a little bit low. Made no sense. Spent a few days in the hospital. They ruled out stroke. They ruled out multiple sclerosis. I was followed by a neurologist, had a little bit of headaches after I got out of the hospital. Then I had a week of really bad fatigue. And then like that, it was gone. Just like I woke up in the morning with the numbness, I woke up one morning and I was like, wow, I kind of feel normal. And then a month or two later, I woke up and the same kind of thing happened. I woke up in the morning and I had really bad stomach pain, but weird stomach pain, not stomach pain I had had before, not like, I think a typical stomach pain is like in one location and maybe throbbing. This was like disparate and little spots all over my stomach seemed to be on fire. Very strange. I went down the route of visiting the gastroenterologist. I had the endoscopy, the colonoscopy. I even swallowed a camera, a pill camera biopsy, it's called, that travels through your digestive system to try to figure out what was going on. And at the end of the day, they said, Melissa, we don't see anything wrong with you. It was very frustrating to be that kind of patient. You know, I was told it was in my head. I was told I had two little boys and I was probably just tired. Was it depression? I was asked. And I said, no, I just feel like every time I eat something, my stomach is in a ton of pain and I'm really tired and I know something's wrong. I saw 12 doctors in 5 states over 5 years.
Wow.
I spent a week at the Mayo Clinic trying to figure out what was wrong with me. I left the Mayo Clinic with the diagnosis of chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia. And I knew that chronic fatigue was definitely something that was describing the state that I was in, but to accept that as a diagnosis with the training that I had had wasn't okay. I knew that wasn't what was wrong with me. That wasn't the root cause of what was causing these very disparate symptoms. And so after that stomach issue had sort of come and gone and we couldn't figure it out. I had all kinds of weird things. I had such bad sacrum pain, which is the at the very base of your spine. You have a triangular bone called your sacrum, and it was on fire. I couldn't bend over. I couldn't touch my toes. In the middle of the night, it would wake me up. It made no sense, right? I visited yet another doctor and they said, "I don't what do you want? Pain medication?" I said, "No, I don't want pain medication. I want to understand what's happening." And so, with some chiropractic and some physical therapy, it eventually resolved. But what I learned after those 12 doctors in 5 states was when I found the right doctor, a functional medicine doctor, she was eventually able to diagnose that I had Lyme disease. And then when I found a specialist in Lyme and tick-borne disease, I learned that not only did I have Lyme disease, which is a singular bacteria that causes Lyme disease, but I had 3 other bacterial infections at the same time.
Wow.
It was crazy. And what I know now about Lyme disease I didn't know then was that when you get bit by a tick, most likely you wind up with more than one infection. Ticks carry multiple infections, and 60%, they say, of people with Lyme disease actually have more than one infection. So while I was treated initially for Lyme disease with a lot of antibiotics, I had a PICC line with intravenous antibiotics and multiple other antibiotics. Um, I continued to get sicker. So, one of the things that I didn't realize now is that I was destroying my gut health with all of these antibiotics. I was not replacing good probiotics. Um, just I was doing a lot of killing and not a lot of replacing. And I wound up in a really bad state. Not only did I have symptoms of Lyme disease, which for me at the time were complete exhaustion, brain fog, I couldn't put sentences together. But I also had unbelievable constipation, bloating, stomach pain that was a result of ruining my gut. So, what I found over the years of working with chronic illness patients is that most of them don't poop. And if we're not pooping well, we're not able to detox our bodies. So, if we're trying to move anything out, the toxins that we are taking in on a daily basis require a daily poop. But when we're trying to kill things in our body, we really need to make sure that we're being able to evacuate that dead bacteria. And I just wasn't able to do that. And a lot of my clients aren't. So that's where I am today. I still continue to work with a chronic illness population. I sort of am a sleuth of sorts. They come to me and they've had a litany of tests and everything's been normal, much in the same way that it was for me. And then we run functional medicine tests. We do a lot of talking. We do a lot of exploring of past history. Did you live in a moldy building? Do you live near a golf course? What does your environmental toxin load look like? What is your diet? All of those questions we go through to figure out sort of what's causing people's gut distress. But that's where we start now with everybody, because if we don't have good gut health, there's nothing to build on. And if we're not pooping, I can't do much more for people, right?
Oh my goodness, what a journey you went on to figure out your own health. I'm sure that had to be very frustrating and kind of feel hopeless during the journey. And now to come out on the other side and to hopefully save other people from all that frustration. I love that story, but it must have been very hard.
It is hard. It was hard, but thank God I was trained in alternative medicine. Thank God I was trained to look for a root cause and to not give up and to not go with quick fix pharmaceuticals, right? When you're constipated and you go to the doctor, when I did, he said to me, "Well, you probably need to drink some more water and eat some more fiber. And if you just take Miralax once or twice a week, you should be fine." And I said, "Fine? For how long?" He's like, "Well, it should resolve eventually." And I said, "Well, what's going to resolve it? What's going to heal that's going to change it?" And he said, "Well, just come back and why don't you try this for 3 months and come back?" That wasn't an option for me. That's not a solution. That is a band-aid. And when people are doing that, when they are riding that roller coaster of constipation and then, a complete purge, you take a big dose of Miralax and you're on the toilet for half an hour, you're losing all of those vital nutrients, right? All of those amino acids, all of those, all the work that you've done to feed that your body is lost in the toilet. If that's happening a few times a week, that's a pretty big deal. People don't
Definitely.
consider the downline effects of that.
Yeah. I feel like when I was growing up, gut health wasn't necessarily an issue, and now it really is a hot topic. Do you think there's been a shift in food or exercise, something else? Or do you think we just weren't talking about it before?
I think both. I think research, right, has started to uncover that the root causes of some of these diseases in our world today, rheumatoid arthritis, starts in the gut. We know that. We didn't know that before. But also, let's talk about the quality of food in this country,
Yeah.
the quality of the things that people are putting into their bodies, calling food, which are really food products. If your food has ingredients, it's no longer food, it's a food product. It was something that was created and manipulated, right? I encourage all of my clients to eat whole foods. We are living in a processed food world. I just gave a lecture to 1,500 people, doctors, practitioners, talking about constipation. And I said, think about when your clients come in and you ask them what their diet consists of. Most Americans will tell you it's a bagel and cream cheese bagel and cream cheese with coffee for breakfast. It's 2 slices of pizza and a Coke for lunch, and it's a burger and fries and maybe a Sprite for dinner. And maybe you have a piece of tomato or a piece of lettuce on that burger, but more oftentimes not, which means you've gotten barely any fiber, right? And you're wondering why you can't move your bowels. And you've gotten tons of seed oils, which are responsible for what's happening with the obesity epidemic in people today. Our bodies do not know what to do with seed oils. There are 8 seed oils. They call them the hateful 8. I probably can't do them all from memory, but they are the canola, the vegetable, the safflower, the sunflower, the soybean, the soy oil. I'm missing 1 or 2, but they're man-made expeller pressed oils that our bodies just don't know what to do with. And I feel that what's happening is our bodies are sort of packing on that fat as a way to store it and keep it away from vital organs. And so we really need to be thinking when when we're looking at gut health, we need to be thinking about those things. And more importantly than any of it, what I think is responsible for the degradation of gut health is a chemical that's pervasive in our society today called glyphosate. It's stunning to me how many people have never heard the word glyphosate. I'll tell you, it's also known by the commercial name Roundup, which is made by a company called Monsanto. People use it to spray their patio weeds, etc., to kill weeds. However, it's used in commercial farming to spray almost all grains in this country, unless they're deemed organic, and then you still have to be careful. But when it's sprayed on the wheat crop, it's sprayed actually twice. It's sprayed once while the wheat is growing to keep the weeds down, and then they spray it a second time right before harvest for something called dry down. It helps them to harvest more of the wheat from the shaft. It's extremely toxic to our gut. It is destroying the gut integrity. There is a book that I'm uh, halfway through. It's called Toxic Legacy: How the Weed Killer Glyphosate is Destroying Our Health and the Environment. It's by a wonderful doctor out of MIT. Her name is Stephanie Seneff, and she has been on the bandwagon talking about this for years now, and people still aren't paying enough attention. If you're eating gluten, wheat, it has to be organic. This is the reason that you go to Italy and eat a baguette, or you go to France and eat a croissant, and you're fine. You don't have the same bloating. You don't have the same digestive discomfort. It's the chemical. It's the glyphosate, not the gluten. That's what's killing our guts today. That's one of. And, stress isn't helping. We are living in a very high stress world. That's not helping us either. But if I had to pick one thing in the whole world that's ruining gut health, it would for sure be glyphosate.
So I think the takeaway then for listeners, if you're listening thinking, oh my gosh, because sometimes it can seem overwhelming. Like, what do I do? But when you're eating anything with wheat, so like bread, oats, just anything there, you would say definitely organic. And then when we flip over our label, I think people would be surprised at how much, when you're talking seed oil, how many things have seed oil in them because they help keep it not necessarily fresh, but from not going bad. And they're a cheap way to do that. So I think when you start looking at labels, you're absolutely right. And they put it in everything. Like you really have to search for things that don't have that in or have like a better avocado or olive oil substitute. Would you agree?
For sure. Yes. And things will be very clearly labeled made with avocado oil, made with olive oil, because they know that consumers are starting to look. Not enough of us are reading labels, but yes, you would be surprised. Go buy cookies at the supermarket, seed oil. Ice cream, seed oil. You know where people are getting a ton of seed oil and they think they're being super healthy? Milk alternatives, oat milk, almond milk. Most of them disgusting. I wouldn't touch them with a 10-foot pole. Oatly has done an amazing job greenwashing that whole idea of oat milk as being safe and healthy. First of all, the nutritional value in oats is not much, right? Best for the fiber. There's no fiber in the oat milk. And the oats are sprayed with glyphosate if they're not organic, especially oats soak up glyphosate. And you've got seed oil. So Oatly's bad for me for three reasons. I think if you're listening to this and you are like, oh gosh, I can't have dairy, what do I do now? Three Trees is a brand that does not use seed oils, and Elmhurst is another brand. You need to look at the label. If you're drinking almond milk, it needs to say almond, water, and maybe salt. That is it. That is all that should be in your milk alternative. Coconut, water. That's it for coconut milk.
And you said three trees. And what was the other company?
It's called Elmhurst, Elmhurst.
Okay.
They
I'll
make
link.
like a walnut, a macadamia, a cashew. And you have to be careful because not all the time are all there. Things are always changing. So you always need to read the ingredients. And a lot of times with brands, one or two products will be safe and the rest won't be. So don't feel like an entire brand is safe because you've seen the back of one product from that brand.
Yeah. Yeah, great advice. And I'll link to those so people can at least have a place to start. I was surprised when I eat nuts almost every day, but you really have to be careful there too of how many are baked in canola or sunflower or soybean oil. In fact, Costco is typically the place I get them because a lot of theirs don't. But I sent my daughter to the grocery store and she couldn't find one that didn't have it. So you really do have to be careful in reading labels.
And you should consider eating your nuts raw,
Yeah.
like raw cashews. And for people who have trouble digesting, you soak them overnight in water and you let them dry out and they're much more palatable. But raw nuts are going to do you a lot better than roasted in oils and salts.
Yeah. Good idea. I know that you really do see a lot of clients and they probably have just a ton of different issues. But when you think of some of the most common ones you see today, what do those look like?
Um, Symptom wise or diagnoses wise?
I guess both. If somebody's thinking, okay, my stomach does hurt all the time. I'm bloated a lot. Maybe some of those types of things
Yeah.
and what that could lead to.
Right. So that's a common complaint. I have a bunch of foods that I can't eat. I'm really sensitive to. I bloat. I get up at in the morning with a flat stomach, and by 10 o'clock, I look 3 months pregnant. I only poop twice a week. So what I'm seeing a lot of, number one is something called H. pylori. It was big for a while when it was discovered that it was what was causing people's ulcers. They did a lot more doctors were diagnosing H. pylori, and that can be diagnosed if you have a endoscopy with they snip a little sample of your stomach lining, or you can run a test. The test that I run on all my clients is called the GI map, and it will also test for H. pylori. But H. pylori is a really interesting bacteria. and it lives in the lining of your stomach, and it excretes an enzyme that lowers the pH of your stomach. That allows it to survive, right? It does better in a low acidic environment. And so it lowers the pH of your stomach. And what happens when your pH of your stomach isn't sufficient, when we don't have enough stomach acid to break down our foods, what happens? Well, food is getting into the intestines, not quite digested. Things are fermenting in the wrong places. Bacteria that was supposed to be killed in the stomach is making its way into the intestines and taking up, setting up shop there. Um, One of the other things that happens when our stomach acid is too low, believe it or not, is we get reflux. We get reflux because it's a strong stomach acid that keeps the flap that closes your stomach from your esophagus closed. When we don't have enough stomach acid, when it's weak, that is a little bit floppy and we can get some regurgitation of stomach acid. A lot of people come and say, "Oh, I have too much stomach acid. I have acid reflux." And realistically, when we run the test, we see there's not enough stomach acid, right? So it could be H. pylori. It could be the fact that you went to the doctor a year or two ago and told the doctor that you had too much stomach acid, and he agreed and gave you something called a proton pump inhibitor, a PPI drug that takes down the level of your stomach acid. And then you caused your own problems, right?
Mm.
You've lowered your own stomach acid, and now you've got the same problems that the H. pylori would have created. So I see a lot of H. pylori that's been undiagnosed. And we need to kill the bacteria and then eventually raise the stomach acid, and the body corrects itself. That's pretty common. SIBO is another one. It's kind of a buzzword in the gut health world. It's spelled SIBO, and it stands for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Um, and the way that that was described to me is that in your lower intestines, you have you have birds, and in your upper intestines, you have fish, and the birds have made their way to where the fish live. And now you've got a problem. You've got overgrowth. I see a lot of bloating. I see a lot of gas, and I see a lot of constipation with SIBO. Um, that really requires its own special test. There's a breath test that you do that measures the amount of hydrogen and methane in your breath. It tells you how you're fermenting foods in your stomach. That's another one that I see sometimes. Um, and then realistically, when I work with a client who comes in for those symptoms, we go through the root causes. I've identified 8 root causes of constipation for people. When you go to the doctor and he says, "I don't know why you have constipation," that's not true. Just isn't exploring it with you because he has 12 minutes with you. But there are 8 root causes, as simple as dehydration, right? Somebody might not be hydrating properly. They might not be getting enough water, or they might not be getting the water into their cells because they're super demineralized and they're on some salt free diet, right? We need some of those salts to get the water into the cell. So it could be something as simple as that. And it could be something as complicated as they've had a toxic mold exposure, which is shutting down their system. Toxic mold will shut down the bowels. And so we go through the 8 root causes as part of my program that I run with people and as part of the work that I do privately with one on one clients. And once we figure out, and it's usually not just one root cause, it's dehydration and mold, or it's liver dysfunction and lack of minerals. But we'll identify where the problem is. And when we fix it there, the problem's fixed.
Gotcha. Are there actual tests that then you run for this?
There is. There's a test that I like to run called the GI map. It gives you about 4 or 5 pages of information back. It'll tell you, interestingly, it'll tell you, are you gluten sensitive? Are your intestines reacting to gluten? Because I'll have a lot of clients that are so unwilling to give up gluten. And I'll say, have you ever considered a gluten sensitivity? Do you have any problems when you eat gluten? And they'll say, no, no, no problem. And then we'll get the test back and the numbers off the chart. And I'll show them and I'll say, well, you may think you're not reacting, but your body is reacting to gluten. It'll tell me how much digestive enzyme you've got. How are you processing fat and protein? Are there protozoa in your stool that are causing a lot of people who have, they'll travel and go to Mexico and eat something bad and have rampant diarrhea and come home and still not be quite right because those bacteria are still present. It'll tell us if that's the case for you. It'll tell us it doesn't do, to be honest, it doesn't do a great job of detecting parasites. That's a whole other story when we get into gut health. Most of us do have a parasitic problem. We all have parasites. We live with them. We cohabitate with them. They have functions. They do good things for us. But when everything kind of gets out of balance, they can get out of balance and overgrown. And so that is another, again, root cause
I love it.
for.
I love that you do the testing so you know exactly what's going on with people's guts. Tell me a little bit more about then, based on that, do you know if somebody should take probiotics or not?
Yeah, so that's another great part of the test is there are certain strains of probiotic that we know from research need to be in your gut for optimal function. There's probably about 10 of them. And this test measures them. It'll give you not only it's that is it yes or no, is it there or not, but where is it robust enough? And then you can choose your probiotic carefully, right? Because there's a lot of people out there taking the same probiotic month after month after month after month. And what they're growing in their gut is essentially a monocrop. And what we're looking for, I should back up and explain this. What we're looking for in our gut is like a garden of wildflowers. We want all kinds of strains of bacteria because each of those strains of bacteria has a different function. So I always liken the gut to a garden, and I'm a gardener. I'm passionate about gardening. And if you've done any gardening, even if you've had a house plant, you know that the health of the plant starts with the soil, right? If you're trying to plant something in a rocky, dried out bed, good luck. But if you took the time to maybe nurture that, put a little compost in, water it, add some worms, right? Give it some nutritive properties. Now it's ready for you to plant some seeds. So when we look at gut health, we make sure that the lining of the gut is optimal, that we're removing the offenders that like glyphosate and the seed oils and artificial sweeteners and alcohol, all the things that we know that are killing the good gut bacteria. And we prepare the soil. And then with the test, we know which flower types are missing. Are we growing all tulips? Are there only tulips and roses? We need 10 different flowers in there. So we make sure that we're planting those seeds. But much like a garden, Anne, it doesn't happen overnight, right? So people think like, well, I'm taking a probiotic and it's not helping.
Yeah.
Right? Takes time. It takes time to, and we have to do it all at the same time. So we're nourishing that soil, we're adding the seeds, which are the probiotics. And then the third part is, as a gardener, you should know, right? If you don't water and feed your garden, well, it's not going to grow either. So, what is it going to take to feed the gut? What are we feeding these good bugs? And the answer is polyphenols. Polyphenols are, they come from dark, rich vegetables, carrots and beets and spinach, right? They're the phytochemicals, and that's what's feeding our gut. And so when we have done all the work to build our gut lining back up, maybe, and we've done some of the work to pay 60, 70, $80 for a bottle of probiotics, and then we eat like junk, or we're not completing the cycle. We're not getting the job done, right? And so I want people to remember when they're working on gut health, this isn't a quick fix. You're not going to fix your constipation overnight. It's not like a Miralax or a Linzess. You're not coming to a holistic practitioner to fix your constipation like that, because that doesn't fix it. That's a Band-Aid. So we prepare the soil, we plant the seeds, and we nurture it. And once those gut bugs are in there doing their job, life changes radically for people, radically.
Would you say too, just diversity in, I know you mentioned polyphenols, but also just diversity in all types of fruits and vegetables? Because is it true that each of them has a little different, maybe nutrient for the gut bugs in our stomach? Is that true?
Absolutely. Um, food is information for our bodies, right? Well, this morning I had the juiciest peach for breakfast. And I just thought, wow, like that peach felt like summer. You kind of cluing your body into where you are in the world and in time when we're eating our healthy foods. I challenge my clients in my program. My program's called Gut Reset 123, and I challenge them to eat 30 different fruits and vegetables every week. Now, it could be the same 30 every week. It's not saying like how many are there, right? But 30 different. So kiwi and grapefruit and a peach and a container of strawberries and some kale. I have a recipe at my website, startpoopingbetter.com. It's called Good Poop Vegetable Soup. And I created the recipe because it has tons of vegetables, tons of polyphenols, all that good fiber, and helps people get on the way to that meeting that quotient of 30 fruits or vegetables. And you can make that soup if you're listening and you live in a food desert and you only have access to canned things. You can use a canned stock. You can use canned vegetables. You can use frozen. If you live on a farm, you can use fresh. If you're vegan, you make it with vegetable stock. If you really want to heal your gut, you use a bone broth. It's super amenable to whatever diet. But the idea is you make that at the beginning of the week, you leave it in your refrigerator. When you are hungry, you think good poop vegetable soup. If you are working on gut health, it is just your go to. You can add different herbs. You can add rice, or you can make it as hearty as you'd like. And if you're not eating soup, I know summer people have a hard time with soup in the summer, and then I encourage people to eat a big leafy green salad with lots of vegetables, which is another easy way to get a bunch of vegetables into your diet. But 30 a week is a great challenge and kind of fun, and it's a fun family challenge if you leave it pinned up to the refrigerator. If you're the parent, if you're the person that's doing the meal cooking, you can write a list and you can share it with your family. Look, guys, we've eaten 30 fruits and vegetables this week. It's pretty awesome.
It is a fun challenge. I've done that with my family, and sometimes they roll their eyes because they're teenagers. But it is, I think, opening their eyes to like diversity is important. Sometimes 30 can seem overwhelming, but like you said, when you have like the soup or another good recipe, you can get like a lot in one recipe, and then you just knock them out all at once. I
Yeah.
love
And
that.
another good way is smoothies. I'm a big fan of smoothies. There's lots of things that can be added to smoothies to get that quotient up.
Yeah. Tell me what you see on, I've heard it say that the gut is really our second brain, and so much of serotonin is really made in our gut. Do you see that mood or depression that can be gut related as well?
Absolutely. 100%. Studies show that if you have an unhealthy gut, you cannot perform at your optimal. You're probably not sleeping your best. You probably have some degree of brain fog. There probably is some imbalance with depression and anxiety. It is imperative that your gut health is intact if you want to make all the neurotransmitters. And the same thing with your immune system, right? Your immune system starts in your gut as well. So if your gut is a mess and your immune system is a mess, they go hand in hand.
Yeah. You mentioned it before, but you mentioned your program, you mentioned working with individuals. Can you tell us a little more about your 12-week program and how you help support people?
Sure. So, one of the biggest reasons for this program, two reasons. One is that I can't work with a million people, right? But if we do a group program together, I can service a lot more people at the same time. That's awesome. And a lot of the people that need to do the deeper work always have to do this work first. So that's one of the reasons that I created it. But also because when you are suffering with digestive problems, it's very lonely. There is something that's real called illness isolation. If you had cancer or you broke your leg, you would get a ton of support from your peers. But when you've got chronic constipation or chronic diarrhea, or you can't go out to eat because you can only eat 5 or 6 foods and you'll be in the bathroom half the time, it's really isolating. It's not something you talk about. You don't talk about it with your spouse. It's not sexy. Most doctors really aren't asking about it unless you're at the gastroenterologist, like I said. And so by creating a program with a Facebook group and weekly interactions with each other, that loneliness isn't a part of the healing, right? We've got a community in which to heal. And I think sometimes that's a big part of it. having that community to heal in. So that's another one of the driving reasons that I created it. But it's a 12-week program that starts with a gut test. Everybody gets the GI map test. And from there, everybody will have wildly different results. And you build your own protocol. If you've got A, you need B. If you've got C, you need D. Um, and along the way, there's education on what we call foundational health, because you can work on your gut health all you want. But if you don't sleep, you're not going to feel well.
Mhm.
You can work on your gut health all you want, but if your head is a mess and you can't control your thoughts and you haven't done any work with mindfulness or meditation, your life's not optimal, right? So it's about optimizing all of the things in our life that we need to be on point so that we can also take care of our gut health. It's really a foundational health program. And we meet weekly on Zoom. Everyone will be following their own protocol, slightly different, but we're there to support each other through it and work our way through the constipation and on to liberation and getting back to life.
I love that. I love that you do it in community. I'm such a big community person too, of like we don't have to go through this alone, and that you really walk people through with the testing so they know exactly what happens. And I'll make sure I link to that in the show notes. So if people are interested, they know where to go, because I feel
Great.
like that could be a good fit for some people. For other people, they may be listening and thinking, okay, I'm not there, like, I really want to have good gut health. And I know you already mentioned a few things that we could do, but talk to me more about like healing the gut naturally.
Sure. So, again, the number one thing we have to do if we want to heal the gut is stop whatever we're doing that's hurting it,
Mhm.
right? There's no way to heal while we're still attacking it. So that takes a lot of introspection and a lot of look at lifestyle. So we always start there. But for people who are, we talked about the importance of testing so that you understand which probiotics are missing. However, if that's not in your budget and you want to go the route of more guessing, there are great probiotics on the market. And if if the root cause of your digestive problems is you do not have enough good gut bacteria, taking good gut bacteria is going to help you, right? And so for people who are like, I don't know if that will help me, try. It's not going to hurt you, a good
Mm.
probiotic. The second thing is, maybe your digestive enzymes, maybe you're listening and you say, 3 years ago, I did go to the doctor for reflux and he did give me that PPI drug. And since then, I have been constipated. Could be a stomach acid issue for you. If you take stomach acid, either a digestive enzyme or something called betaine HCl, and you get worse, you could have H. pylori, because we never want to introduce acid because that just creates a big fight in your stomach lining, right? When we treat H. pylori, we get rid of the H. pylori first and then we raise the stomach acid. So you can try it on your own, try to raise your stomach acid, but know that if you've got a problem, it could be that you also have H. pylori, right? So we can do these things on our own. It's just always better to test. In functional medicine, they always say test, don't guess. Um, and I think because supplements are expensive, instead of throwing something at your situation without complete clarity, oftentimes saving the money and spending it on a test so that you know exactly what you're doing is really going to benefit you the most. And I work with people who don't want to work through a whole program. And I will have a meeting. We'll do a first appointment, we'll do a test, and then we'll do a second appointment to go over the test. And then they take the results either to their doctor or they come up with a protocol, etc. You don't have to do the whole big program. But I think testing, if you're listening and you've been stuck and you've been riding the roller coaster and you're not getting better, I can promise you, you're only going to get worse, right? The downline effects of the Linzess and the Miralax, the downline effects of the toxicity backing up, it's not worth it. Now is the time. If you're listening and you're not, and you've been dealing with this, now is the time to get well.
I love that. I love that. And as we wrap up, I always like to ask people their top one or two books that they would recommend. Doesn't have to necessarily be on gut health, but it can be.
Well, I think the book that I talked about at the beginning of our chat, the Toxic Legacy book, Stephanie Seneff's book, Toxic Legacy: How the Wheat Killer Glyphosate is Destroying Our Health, I think is really important for people to understand. There's also another book that I really like by a doctor named Neil Nathan. If anyone's watching the video, if you can see, I'm holding it up, but it's called Toxic: Heal Your Body from Mold Toxicity, Lyme Disease, Multiple Chemical Sensitivities, and Chronic Environmental Illness. And what this does for people is it walks you through what the symptoms of some of these um, toxicities look like. What does it look like if you have mold toxicity? And you can evaluate for yourself if that is what's driving your symptoms, if that's your root cause. So that's another one of my favorite books.
I think that would be super helpful. I'm going to link to both of those in our show notes so people can get that if that's something that they need.
Great. Yeah, really helpful books. Really important to know. Glyphosate you just need to know about. It's too toxic. And one of the things, if you're listening out there and you have a little kiddo, please stop feeding them Cheerios. Cheerios is one of the most toxic with glyphosate products on the market today. And we are putting those Cheerios in front of those little babies with those little fingers. You can get something that's organic. It won't contain glyphosate, but the Cheerios brand Cheerios, no bueno. Really too much glyphosate for little tiny babies.
Oh my gosh, so helpful and good to think about. And honestly, something I would not have thought about at all.
Mhm.
Melissa, I can't thank you enough. This has been so incredibly helpful. I've learned a lot from you. I know people are going to want to connect. What is the best way to do that?
So, for people who are looking for some natural solutions to heal constipation and gut health, go to startpoopingbetter.com. I wrote an ebook. It's free. It's there for you. It has the recipe for the good poop vegetable soup recipe. And then my name is my website, Melissa Hall Klepacki. There's all kinds of information about the work that I do, how you can work with me. I'm all over social media. I'm on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, sharing and trying to educate people. So come find me there.
Awesome. And I'll make sure I put those links in the show notes. But thank you so much for joining today. All of the work that you're doing, I know that you're going to help so many people out there. You already are. So I appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Anne. It was really wonderful to share with you today.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for joining Be the Person podcast. If this resonated with you and you know someone that's having potential gut issues, please share this with them. It could be life changing. And always, it would mean the world to me if you would give us a 5-star review. Thanks so much for joining today. This episode is all about gut health, and I wanted to share with you what I personally do for gut health. I put my protocol in the show notes because I believe in it. It's really helped me not only sleep better, but my skin cleared up, my digestion was better. All around, I felt better. So check it out. The link is in the show notes.